All right, continuing with this, I want to just take a little, just apply what we're talking about here. And we're going to look at a virtue. That when we meditate, we should use directive meditation. Look, nobody knows you better than you. You know what is deficient. You know what is adipose. Adipose means something that's there that shouldn't be there. It's unnecessary, and many times, sometimes what is not there is a sin, and sometimes it's a weight. Now, what is a weight? I've heard preachers preach on it, try to make a weight and a sin the same thing. They're not. A weight is a sin, okay? And when you're running, when you're in a race, weight is something you don't want. Now, you may train with the weight. All of us have seen these people jogging along, and they've got a pack on their back, and I don't know how much weight they've got in it, but they're carrying weight because, you see, they're preparing to run without that weight. So life is a long-term race. It's a marathon. Somebody was telling me about these people. They run every day for like 2 weeks or something. And I mean, that's what they do. They just run all day. And the next day they run all day. And the next day they do the same thing. They like some people get on a bicycle and ride across country. They run for hundreds, tens, 20s, scores of miles, whatever. All right. Now, when you do that, life is like that. And so we're to, as it says in Hebrews 12, we're to deal with the sin, of course, and the weight is different from a sin. So what is a weight? A weight is, some people have said, and I think they're correct, weight is something that's not wrong, but it takes up, it's too big a part of our life. All right, and so we need to get rid of it or to minimize it. I had a pastor up here when we first came to New York, and he loved photography. He loved it, and he gave it up. Why? Because he couldn't control it. Now, I can control photography. Not a big deal to me. All right, but he couldn't. No, I have things he can't. I can control, perhaps he could. I can't control, he can. Now, so we get rid of the sin, we deal with the habit, and today we're going to talk about a virtue. Now, we memorize verse or verses, we meditate on them, and then we apply them. Applying the verse, applying the biblical concept, idea, whatever, gives insight, and it gives clarity. When I don't wear these, I don't see much. No, I mean, look, I can see all of you. I can tell which one of you is a male and which one of you is a female. I can tell what you got on. It's not like I'm going to kiss the cat instead of Ruth if I don't wear these things. Back when we used to have a cat. Besides, when you pick up a cat, you can tell he's a little different. All right, but I can't read. I cannot read this. This is all a blur. All right, I can see. I'm not even sure it says chapter, whatever. I can't even read that. Okay, so clarity. All right. Also, insight. Insight, and folks, this is something I keep hammering on, beating the drum. When Ruth was set up, some people don't like this John W. Peterson song because it's not talking about doctrine. There's a lot of the Bible that's not talking about doctrine. A lot. More than you could ever think of unless you're really thinking. Go through it. Find the doctrine. It's not there. Not in the sense that people talk about doctrine. Now look, I'm a great fan of doctrine. I believe in it. But The Bible says psalms and hymns and spiritual songs. Okay?
Right.
I was reading some years ago. It's an excellent book, but then this lady goes off on this rant about we should only sing psalms. Well, God doesn't say that. The lady says it. Well, who's the lady? Well, she doesn't have any authority. And it's really patently not scriptural. And you know what? If it's not scriptural, you know what it is? It's stupid. And I don't apologize for you. The Bible would say unwise. It's not wise. It's foolish. Okay? Get your biblical act together. When we apply something, when we apply what we've been meditating on, it gives insight. You see things you don't see. It gives, and by the way, this gives dullness. The three of us had something to do with the church many years ago, before Ruth and I got married. That's how many years ago. And there was a fellow there who was working on his PhD at Bob Jones in some sort of theological thing. And let me tell you something. Bob Jones does not give away PhDs. You earn them. At least back then you did. I mean, you earned it. It was ooh, tough. What was wrong? He was so busy learning, he wasn't doing. And this guy split that church. Vile, vitriolic, nasty. Why? He was full of knowledge, but he was not full of the virtues that knowledge was meant to produce. Scriptural knowledge is fine if you use it. It would be better you didn't know it if you don't use it. And Christendom, the only Christendom I really know is fundamental Christendom, mostly amongst the Baptists. So, were you with me? I don't think you were. I think I went down there to see my mother. So I visited this church. It was not exactly a storefront church, but anyway, it was a small church, a church plant. And I don't even know if it's still there. And you had to be about 75% sanctified to go to that church and to feel comfortable. Any new believer would have left it in a very short period of time. Why? Well, these people were so busy being spiritual. They were pseudo-spiritual, okay? You're not spiritual if you're always looking down your long nose at someone else. And so, if you apply the scripture that you meditate, you receive insight. You see things that you hadn't seen before. You see things that other people don't see. You put two and four together and all that. You see, so look. We like to talk about biblical principles, okay? But I don't want to say that. I mean, the reason I don't want to say that is because if someone says that, then you got your idea. So I'm going to use a different term, macro. What's macro? It comes from Greek word, Greek prefix. And micro, the same. Macro is big. In economics, there's what's known as microeconomics and macroeconomics. In microeconomics is me taking my little bit of my money and going into a store and buying something. That's microeconomics. Macro is the big picture. Now the big picture in the Bible are the principles, are the foundational things. For example, creation. That is a huge thing. It is so, because you see, in that you have that God created us in His image. He created male and He created female. He didn't create all this nonsense. I think there are 32 genders that the city of New York recognizes. God didn't create 32 genders. No, He did not. He created 2. And all you have to know what you are is to take a shower and you can figure it out. Okay? You are a male or you are a female. End of discussion. Okay? Now, if you have a problem with that, as far as I'm concerned, that's your problem. It's not mine. I'm getting tired of regular people having to deal with it. What is it? I think it's something like this. 3/100ths of a percent. Okay? That's these kooks. And I don't apologize for calling them that. You know? We used to call them mentally ill. That's what we used to call them. Mentally ill. You know, people who, it's like the guy that thinks he's a pineapple. Well, I feel like a pineapple today. I don't know if I could do that because I don't know what a pineapple feels like. In fact, actually, I don't think pineapples feel at all. They just are. You're a male or you're a female. Now, what happened was when society tossed the Bible out, then it's of no. You see, we talked about this before. You basically had, at one time, we had biblical morality. Thus saith the Lord. And even people who did not follow that recognized that it was, God said it. They didn't obey it, but God said it. Then later on, we got rid of God. God's a real imposition. He really gets in the way, causes all kinds of problems, makes people feel bad. And so they said, let's get rid of it. So now but for a long, long time, the morality continued. Had no basis, but it continued. Good girls don't do this, good guys don't do that. Good people do this, good people do that. It's biblical. I mean, it's a biblical morality, but it's not based on the Bible. It's traditional morality. But traditional morality is nothing more than my opinion or your opinion or someone else's opinion. And why is your opinion better than mine or mine better than yours? It's not. And so, at some point, somebody asked that nasty, piercing question, why not? And there was no real good answer. Because you just don't do that. Well, then why do you not? Well, you just don't. Well, why don't you? Well, you just don't. There was no answer. You see, the real answer is you do or you don't because God says so. But that was gone. That was gone. I mean, when you go out there, it's whoever's got the authority or whoever's willing to bite your head off to try to shame you or whatever. And you have to tiptoe around these people who have and quite literally, folks, 50 years ago, they would have said that they were the psychological and psychiatric institutions. The idea would be that they're mentally ill. And they are. sinful or both. And by the way, people say, oh, it's just sin. Well, no, there comes a point where sin can make you mentally ill. You know, there are people who literally are insane or neurotic or whatever. And how did they get there? Well, in most cases, not in all cases, but in most cases, and I don't fault them because you see, the world has no answers. The world literally has no answers. They did I remember reading some years ago, I think that Jay Adams wrote a book about competent counsel, and he said that they had determined that people who went to for psychological help, counseling and all, and those who didn't got well at the same rate that those who did. Would you love to have a job where you're useless? Now, some people think I'm useless in my job, but that's okay. I don't, it doesn't bother me. I know better. All right? Now, so they have no answers. So if you're angry and bitter or guilty, they have no answers. They have nothing to solve the problem. And many times those particular conditions drive a person to just a terrible condition. And you know what? I'd rather be in pain physically than be in pain emotionally.
Yeah.
And so that's why they've got to have counseling. They've got to be told 10,000 times that it's not their fault. Well, look, the initial experience may not be their fault, but how we handle it. But the secular world really has no answers. But anyway, let's back to this. All right, so you apply the scripture to yourself. Don't apply it to the other person. The only person I can fix is me. And to try to fix anybody else. I've tried to fix Ruth's dad for 50 years, and I've got nowhere, okay? I've got nowhere, okay? And it just bothers the dad, all right? No, really. But, you know, I can't fix someone. You know, you can't even fix your own children. I told my kids one time, you know, I can't make you do right. But boy, I can sure make you wish you had. Okay? And who can make the child do right? Only the child. Only the child. So, it gives insight. You see really wonderful things in the Scripture. It gives you clarity. Now, I know there's some overlap. But if you don't apply it, then you become spiritually dull. And I've seen it over and over again. And one of the things that happens is people like this, if it's a big enough thing, they begin to be hypercritical of other people. They make some minor thing into some huge thing while they're continuing in sin in something that's far larger than the thing that they have made a major deal. All right, now we're going to look at a virtue. Back one, very important virtue. All right, let's turn over to 1 Corinthians chapter 13. Now, one of the ways we change what we are, look, there are two considerations. One is what we are, and the other one is how we act. I believe that you initially change how you act. You grew up with this. I grew up with this. Get your elbows off the table. Chew with your mouth closed. Use your fork, not your hands. Don't talk with your mouth full. Now, you never had that experience, did you? Of course you did. Now, what happened? Eventually, you came to accept this kind of behavior. You sit closer to the table. All kinds of table manners. Now, most of us, now you've seen them out there, folks, these people that, you know, they eat like Vikings or something. And everyone knows Vikings had very poor table manners. At least that's what we think. Anyway, how do we know? Oh, boy, they do in the movies, right? You know? Okay. Oh, so, all right, take a bath, take a shower, wash behind your ears. And you come out of the shower and your mother does an inspection. Your ears are dirty. Brush your teeth. And what happens? The action will result in eventually changing us to are. Instead of doing, we become are. For example, you learn not to like feeling dirty. You learn to, these masks are the worst, okay? I tell people, you know, after a while there's something really bad growing under these things, okay? Your mouth tastes bad, and, you know, it's just terrible, okay? You don't like having a mouth that feels dirty. Why? Because you were forced to act and act and act and act until you became able to accept something. You change your habits by changing your action. And these things are deliberate. So, folks, it's so very, very, I read these marriage blogs and I say, you people, what is wrong with you? Men are not wired like women are wired, and women are not wired like men are wired. And ladies, I want you to understand, you understand men a whole lot less than you think you do. We know we don't understand you. But a lot of women think they understand. Oh, yeah, I got it. No, you didn't. In fact, I steadfastly affirm, and I think I've been around long enough to be an authority, I steadfastly affirm that neither of us understands the other. We work on the basis of what, and maybe a small measure of why, but we don't really get down to the kernel of it. Because we don't have the wherewithal to do so. Because we are the other gender. And so, you don't have to understand something to do it. You do it because you've been told this is a good thing to do. All right? The other thing that's bothersome is if I'm going to change, there is an uncomfortable period of time. I was thinking last night, and I didn't have time to look up the reference, but I think it was David says, I am even as a weaned child.
Psalm 131, I think.
Psalm 31?
131.
131, okay. But what does that mean? All right, here's the child, and this child has been nursing. There were no bottles back then, okay? There was bottle mommy, all right? And so the child's nursing, and the mommy and the mother have decided it's time to stop. Now, when I was growing up, the Southerners used to wean a child at 12 months. I think that is absolutely the best thing to do. Okay? It's a whole lot easier than if you wait to 18 months or 2 years or something like that. All right? But you can do what you want to because it's your baby. But 12 months is a really good time to do it. All right? But so what happens? Oh man, it ain't pretty. Here, kid, drink this. You give them a cup, a sippy cup. You know, I don't even think did they have sippy cups? Not when I was kids, but when we were little, I don't even think they had sippy cups. They'd hold your head and help you drink it. We survived, folks, because they were tough.
They have sippy cups that don't spill now. That's
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Our kids would just dump it up.
Oh, yeah,
It would
no,
just spill out.
just all kinds of things. But here, kid, drink this. Now we were blessed. Joel weaned himself at 10 months. He looked around and said, "Nobody else is doing this. I'm not doing it either." And so he just like that. But most kids, there is a transition time. And during this transition time, the child is upset, they're cross, they're unhappy, they're discontent. But when they're finally there, and by the way, don't give them a bottle at bedtime. You just make it walk like you're just prolonging the agony. Cold turkey is the best way to do just about anything. Do what?
To get too decayed if you give
Yeah,
them a
to
bottle,
get
it's
too
very
decayed.
bad.
So anyway, so the child has reached the point where, that's yesterday's problem. He says, "I am even as a weaned child." Is it Psalm 31?
131.
131? Did you look
Yeah,
at
verse 2.
to verse 2? Okay, now, you're not going anywhere in your spiritual life remaining in your comfort zone. You're never going anywhere in your marriage. You're never going anywhere in life. You're going to be a zero with the rim. You must go through these difficult times to get to the other side. Now, I haven't weaned myself in a long time, but I went from sugar in my tea to no sugar in my tea. Right? I've been drinking so many things that don't taste good, it didn't matter. All right. So anyway, virtue. Now, first of all, this is, I want to explain a word. A lot of people like to say, "Oh, charity is not a good word. Charity is the same thing as love." It's not. It's not. Charity captures the essence of what love really is. Charity is love in action. And we live in a society where people don't understand that love is not an emotion. I remember when I used to work construction. I think it was either the plumber's crew or the electrician's crew. I used to know the top 40. You know what the top 40 are? They still have the top 40? Rock stations, they were the top 40 most popular songs. I used to know them. Why? I was force-fed them. The plumbers or the electricians, or it was, back their panel truck up, get their stuff up, turn up the volume on their radio, and we heard whatever station they were listening to for the number of hours that they were there. And what do these people talk about? They fell in love, they fell out of love. No, they didn't fall into it, and they didn't fall out of it. They only know what it is. If somebody hit them with it like a brick, they wouldn't know what it is. And unfortunately, many, many Christians are the same way. Love is a determination. Now, infatuation, that's a different story altogether. That's what they have. And I remember being a young, were you infatuated with Clyde? You were, weren't you? You don't know. She was what, 12? You were 12? Yeah. I think you were. He gave you the flutters. Okay? And we all have had that experience. Now, you might not have said a thing to that other person. They may have never known, and there may be maybe you were the heartthrob of some other person, and no one ever said anything. You know, I really think there are a lot of people who never get married because they don't have the guts. And they say, guts and getting married, yeah. You know, getting shot down, as we used to call it. I don't know what they call it now. It doesn't matter. You ask a girl, and she says, no. She says, I'm washing my hair that night.
It takes all night to wash your hair.
That means I ain't interested in you at all. That also means you didn't want to be around her anyway. She's not very creative. Yeah, we used to have a lady who couldn't come to church on Wednesday night because that's the day she washed her hair. Totally exhausted her. You know, she was 62. No, charity is a good word. Love in action, because you see, that's what real love is. It's doing something. It's not feeling something. Now, if you can manage to feel it, that's perfectly fine. Go for it. All right, so here we see the importance of love, or the superiority of love. Now, he's just finished dealing with the spiritual gifts, which are great. We've talked extensively about that. He says, though I speak with the tongues of men and angels and have not charity. I think this is speaking of eloquence. I love eloquence. I love it. I don't have too much regard for Abraham Lincoln for a long number of reasons. We won't talk about it. But the Gettysburg Address is the purest distillation of eloquence ever delivered. That man said some incredibly eloquent things. I love eloquence. I've always, when I was a kid, I loved it. So he said, no matter how eloquent I am, and I don't have charity, love in action, I'm a sounding brass or a tinkling cymbal. And the translators of the King James were very kind with tinkling silver. It's really like a discordant, clashing gong. I'm going to give you a good southern word. It's a lot of racket. My mother would often say, "What's that racket?" Little boys love racket. They love noise. I love explosions. I just love them, okay? Because men like that. We used to go to Fort Hamilton Army Base, and they would do the 1812 overture, and instead of timpani, they would use howitzers. Oh man, loved it. Loved it. I like the 1812 overture, but I really love it. Kaboom! Paul says, just a lot of noise. If I do not have charity, then just a lot of noise. Hey, what good does noise do to someone? Well, not much. Sometimes it just keeps them awake at night, or whatever. And though I have the gift of prophecy, and understand all mysteries, and all knowledge, what? I am nothing, he says. And though I have all faith that can even move mountains, if I don't have love, I'm nothing. And though I bestow all my goods to feed the poor. Now the poor probably appreciate that. Hey, you got a meal? I got a free meal yesterday. It was Juneteenth. I ate 2 lunches. That was terrible. I shouldn't have done that. But I ate the peanut butter honey sandwich. It was my lunch, and then they were giving away free food. It was halal cart. I jumped on it. And there was a fellow some years ago, they talk about hunger in this country. Hunger's what little children are subject to because their parents don't access what's there. And hunger is what elderly people who can't get out and get what's out there, that's what they have. But if you're an able-bodied person and you're hungry, it's your own fault. There was a fellow some years ago who let his beard grow, got some grubby clothes, got them real good and dirty, went out on the streets, lived on the streets in New York for a week, and gained 3 pounds. Ate food wherever you get it, gained 3 pounds. That, my friends, is 10,500 extra calories. It's out there. You can get it. All right? But in that day, no. And so he said, even if I give all that I possess to feed the poor, and then I give my body to be burned, in other words, I'm a martyr for the cause, and have not charity or love and action, it doesn't profit me. So charity is important, folks. Paul just said it. He didn't just say it straight out, and maybe if you're a man, you didn't get the hint. But he said it de facto, that it's very important. Secondly, he talks about the qualities of love. Now, folks, I got to tell you something. Love is not delicate. It's tough. It's tough. Real love is made out of sturdy stuff. Real love, exercised properly, is indestructible. You can't kill it. Now, what does Paul say here? It suffers long and is kind. I think I said this last week, maybe the week before. I think what he's saying here is, even though we have suffered long, we're still kind. Now you could put your name there. I suffer long and continue to be kind because I love, because I have charity. The charity that I have enables me to suffer long. Now, every one of us would not, if we're honest, there's nothing to be done for dishonest people, okay? But if we're honest, there have been instances where we didn't suffer very long and we got nasty about it. I will raise my hand, I will get at the front of the class, the front of the line, and we will have a parade. There have been many times I didn't really suffer, and most decidedly did not suffer long. And I was not kind. Charity envieth not. Now, what is envy? Envy is thinking this way. Why did they get and I didn't? Why were they honored and I was not? Why did they receive that privilege and I did not? And go on and on and on and on. And every one of us have thought that way. And if you deny it, I will stand flat-footedly and call you a first-class or a world-class liar. Okay? Because, you know why I say that? Because I know human nature. Now, some of us have a bigger problem than others. You've known people, they really need to carry their head around in a wheelbarrow. They've got such a big head. They need a neck brace. All right, they have a, the word that
Ego.
Freud gave us, ego, is really the Greek word ego. And ego is an unnecessary pronoun, except where it's used for emphasis. For example, let me show you real fast. That's the word grapho, means I write. Okay? That's I write. It's in cases, and so it says I write. But I want everybody to make sure that they know that I wrote it, then I write ego grapho. I wrote it, not you. Okay? So you see, that's what. And why would I envy somebody that I love getting something good, nice? Why would I, if I really love somebody, why would I be upset that they were honored, that they were privileged, given a privilege, that they received something good? Why? I wouldn't. So if I envy, I'm not really loving.